Good morning, Joe Winebanks.
Good morning, Stephanie Miller.
I do not have your fancy legal degree, but when you tweet "wow," I know something's up.
Yeah.
Legally speaking, you said "wow."
That's how I felt. Was wow.
Bolton must testify.
Amazing. It's a showstopper, a game changer. How can you vote against witnesses when you have that?
Well, you said anyone voting no on this is guilty of a cover-up greater than anything Nixon did, and it is interesting, Joe, how many people are making that analogy. To this is the tape, this is the smoking gun, right?
I really think so, and I know that Chairman Nadler, and by the way, my thoughts and prayers are with him and his wife right now, and I'm hoping for some good treatment that they can find for her.
Yeah.
But I know he got in trouble for saying something about the Senate being part of a cover-up, but really, isn't that true?
Yes.
How can you even doubt that if they aren't willing to hear evidence, and if they think that there's not enough evidence, but they don't want to hear what is clearly in front of them, how can they possibly vote to acquit? And would the acquittal have any meaning? The answer is no. It would not be an exoneration.
And isn't it how does he not call them out for untruth? Is it not untrue to say not one Republican was allowed in the skiff? I mean,
of course it's untrue, and of course the real media, the people who care about truth, are calling them out, but it's not getting called out on Fox News. So the people who watch Fox News, which by the way did not cover the closing argument, and for much the closing arguments of the Democratic side of the House managers, and for much of the coverage during the full time that the House managers had, would put it in a little box with commentary over it, so you couldn't hear any of the coverage. So people watching Fox News are not getting, 24/7 coverage, gavel to gavel, and they aren't getting the facts. They will hear the arguments, and let's look at what the lawyers for the Republicans, for the defense team, the president's defense team, what did they say? Was it true? And did they know that it wasn't true?
Well, you retweeted, Jennifer Rubins said, not only does Bolton evidence blow the entire defense, but it reveals that Trump's lawyers have been lying to senators' faces and denying direct evidence of the quid pro quo. Will any of them be offended? You said the real question, will any of the Trump defense team be disbarred?
Exactly. I really believe that. I think Jennifer Rubin had done the initial tweet, and I thought, really, it's the kind of thing that if it happened in court, the judge would probably hold you in contempt, and the Bar Association might disbar you for that kind of misrepresentation. One of the first things that any young lawyer learns in a case of defense is you never say something as if it was the truth unless you have personal knowledge that it's the truth. Otherwise, you say, my client tells me, or you will hear witnesses say, which those are true statements. You will hear witnesses say that. But you can't say something that is blatantly false and that you know is false.
Yeah.
So in this case, how is it, I am sure, that the White House counsel saw the manuscript of this book. He knew what John Bolton would say. There are witnesses who had direct conversations with the president who will say the president linked withholding aid to Ukraine announcing, and by the way, let's stress announcing, they didn't have to do it, they just had to say they were going to do it, announcing an investigation of Hunter and Joe Biden, who did nothing wrong.
Yeah. So a lot of speculation, Jill, on the Bolton thing. You tweeted, I think I know now why Bolton wants to testify. It removes motive for Trump to block the release of Bolton's book. So how subpoena him if the Senate doesn't? It gets the truth out. I know this is what we're settling for a hero on the Republican side, John Bolton, who knows what his motives are or whatever. But at this point, if he testifies and tells the truth, who cares, right?
Well, I was very suspicious about him testifying, and I've tweeted many times that he is a high-risk witness, that he could turn turn into a Corey Lewandowski who completely, defends the president and won't answer the questions and makes the questioners look ineffective. And I couldn't figure it out. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me, this is why he wants to testify. He had to submit his book for review, and the White House could insist on it being not published. And if he wants to publish it and sell books, after he testifies, why withhold it? The information's already out there. So you don't have to if you're the White House, you lose any incentive to prevent the publication. So far, there's nothing of national security. It is damaging to the president, but I wouldn't put this in the category of the kind of thing that the national security concerns would justify. But the president, until now, unless this is public, and so if getting it public is what it will take to get his book published, it doesn't matter if he testifies to the Senate or if he testifies to the House. Originally, I thought, well, he's saying he'll testify to the Senate because he knows the Senate will not call him.
Yeah.
And the reason he didn't offer to testify to the House is because they would have had him. But now, if I'm right, his reason is to get his book out there and to eliminate the president sitting on it and, basically censoring it, then the House will do just as well. Once it's public, it's public.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. So, yeah, because they're saying like he could hold a press conference today. He could go on CNN today. I mean, the House can subpoena the manuscript, can't they?
I haven't done the legal research on that. There's a lot of stuff about prior restraint of speech. And so, if for your first suggestion that he go on MSNBC, I would say, or Progressive Talk Radio, but we know he won't go there. And we know that Fox News won't let him say anything that's contrary. But so if he goes on some, neutral station and says what he says, it would be very hard to censor him beforehand. They might sue him afterward for breach of some rule about, getting clearance for saying something. But
there's no attorney-client privilege between, say, Bolton and his publisher, right? I mean...
Well, not attorney-client privilege. It's just a rule about the First Amendment, is that we don't censor people from speaking. We can punish them if they say something that is defamatory, slanderous, or dangerous to national security. They can be held accountable after they speak.
Yeah.
And, of course, when you go to the White House, if you work in the White House or in any other national security environment, you have a special obligation. You sign papers saying that you will not reveal anything that damages the national security. But that runs up against the First Amendment. It's sort of like all the non-disclosure agreements that people signed against revealing sexual assault by Donald Trump. They signed, Stormy Daniels signed a non-disclosure agreement and got paid.
Yeah.
And so they could sue her to get the money back for having violated her non-disclosure agreement. And that's what I'm saying is I think that getting it out there in response to a subpoena is one way in which you do not ever violate a non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah.
The non-disclosure agreement is violated if you voluntarily come forward. But if you're responding to a subpoena, then you're always exempt from the non-disclosure.
Oh, okay. Got it.
That's why I'm saying if he gets subpoenaed by the House and he wants to have this public, so that there's no reason to block his book from being published.
So
that's why I'm saying.
Right, got it. So so obviously this very damning, Lev Parnas tape. His lawyer told CNN yesterday that there are more tapes. I mean, isn't that the other calculus for senators? Not just Bolton's book, but more and more is going to come out. They're not going to be able to stop it, and their vote in history is going to look worse and worse and worse, right?
Absolutely. It is impossible to make an argument that passes what I call the red face test and say, I'm for for Trump to say, I'm just protecting the presidency, that's why I don't want any of this to come out because it would affect the presidency. And by the way, that was exactly what Richard Nixon said. I was proofreading the final parts of my book. And
Watergate Girl, which I'll be reading on the plane to Seattle Sexy Liberal February 29th. It will be available 2/25/20. Pre-order now. Watergate Girl, I can't wait. Go ahead.
Thank you for the plug. But truly, I was doing the final editing, and when I looked at it, I went, oh my God, listen to that sentence. It's in fact, hold on one second. I have it right in front of me.
Oh my.
Read you. I mean, it's maybe sounds
Watergate Girl, book on tape.
We get a preview.
Preview on the Stephanie Miller
yes.
Show, worldwide
on the
preview right now.
Miller Show. It just says, let's see, in a televised speech to the nation on August 15th, arguing that he was withholding the tapes for the good of the presidency. If I were to make public these tapes containing, as they do, blunt and candid remarks on many subjects that have nothing to do with Watergate, the confidentiality of the office of the president would always be suspect, end of quote, he said. So is that not exactly what Donald Trump is doing?
Yep.
Saying, oh, there are so many subjects that John Bolton knows about. Well, first of all, the questioner can only ask about subjects that aren't relevant to anything except the articles of impeachment.
Yeah.
So they're not asking him, what do you think of random people? What do you think of of Putin? What do you think of any other world leader? Or even, what do you think of Biden? Because that's not relevant
Thank you.
to
Yep.
the issue at hand.
Yep.
So that's just a phony excuse, but it just struck me when I was reading that. As,
Yeah.
oh my God, that's what he's saying right this minute.
You're like, oh my God, that's brilliant. Who wrote that? Yeah, somebody tweeted, if Watergate happened today, the tape would come out with Nixon discussing the cover-up. Nixon would say there's no cover-up. The GOP would acquit Nixon because there was zero evidence of a cover-up. And Eric Boehlert said, only after the GOP Senate voted not to allow the tapes to be used as evidence in any impeachment trial. I mean,
Exactly. It's so true. It's so accurate. Oh my God.
well, let's, okay, my layman's term is the defense sucked over the weekend. Maybe you could break it down a little bit more legally, but wasn't it basically gaslighting? It was basically, I know you are, but what am I? They basically said, no, we're not trying to interfere with the election. You are.
Right.
He actually said they're here to perpetrate the most massive interference in an election in American history,
Right.
and we can't allow that to happen.
It is. You have succinctly said exactly the truth. So there's, why break it down legally? It's correct. You're right. They are doing what children do. No, it's not me. It's you. You
Right.
did it.
Right.
And of course, the reason that impeachment is in the Constitution is because there comes a time, the founders felt there might come a time when someone would be so corrupt and so threatening to national security that you couldn't wait until the election, that you had to stop the president in his tracks, even if an election were coming up, because they did debate at length. Yes, we have to be able to impeach judges because they have life tenure. But really, do we have to impeach the president? Because he has a limited term, and why don't we just wait until the election?
Right.
And then they said no, because he could threaten national security.
Right.
He could start a war.
We have to wait till the election he's actively interfering in now, Jill.
Right, exactly. and he could interfere with the election, so you wouldn't even have a fair election. And therefore, we have to allow impeachment. Impeachment depends on proof of very extraordinary things. It's high crimes. It's not a violation of the federal code of criminal law. It's a violation of our national security, of the public interest.
As 1998 Alan Dershowitz and 1998 Lindsey Graham argued so eloquently.
Yes.
Yes, it's
You
so
said that
simple.
yesterday on TV. You're like, I agree with 1998 Alan Dershowitz.
Exactly. In '98, he was sensible and sane, and listen. I understand that defense lawyers, and he is not a constitutional scholar. He is a defense lawyer. Defense lawyers can represent conflicting points of view,
Right.
because they do things that serve their purpose. But they can't go to Congress and say that something is not a crime that they already said is a crime. It's
Yeah.
either a crime or it's not a crime. You can argue something different based on, defending someone, but this is just wrong. And
Jill.
believe me, I understand defense.
Yep.
Everybody's entitled to one.
Jill, a little breaking news as we speak in terms of the dam is breaking news. Republican Senator Ron Johnson said, my guess is John Bolton is telling the truth about Trump and Ukraine. So,
Free.
yep,
Wow.
yep. So,
Okay.
yeah, keep calling, keep resisting.
Ask him if he'll support calling witnesses.
Yep. Yep, we are. Listen, Chicago Sexy Liberal, you and I are going to talk about fact witnesses until the cows come home in Shamburg.
Thanks a
So
lot.
I'm going to say that's going to be, maybe near the Democratic convention, but we will keep you posted.
Wow, that would be so cool. That would be so great.
All right, love you, Jill. Congratulations on the book. I can't wait to read it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, love you. Watergate Girl, geet.
Yeah.